Knowledge is Power is where you come to hear people's life experiences to learn from. So, without further ado, let's roll the intro.
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
I have a dream. Will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Hello and welcome back to the Knowledge is Power podcast. We have another repeat guest on today, but before I get to that, I want to kind of give you a briefing on what we're going to talk about today. So, I was listening to a podcast the other day and I don't want to say annoyed, but a little disappointed with what this prominent figure had talked about on this podcast and his sort of thoughts and feelings on the current housing market. And it prompted me to want to have this discussion. And we're going to talk about some things that a lot of people may have strong opinions on. So I wanted to invite, the most opinionated person that I know, which is Adam Dow. Thank you, Adam. Welcome.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Great intro.
Yeah, no problem. Adam is not opinionated. He's a great guy, but he's very smart. So, but yeah, so let me kind of start off. I wanted to, before we get to that discussion that podcaster had with that other podcaster, I wanted to compare and contrast, New Hampshire's real estate market to other states, and just sort of get your thoughts and feelings on it, because you've been in real estate for as long as I've been alive, not to make you feel that way, but, it's true. And you have a lot of experience and you went through a recession, kind of too, especially with the .com bubble and your past experience and your past business.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've seen a lot. So I wanted to compare New Hampshire to Maine, but I couldn't really find, believe it or not, super reliable numbers on Maine. So I decided to leave it out, other than like going through some MLS statistics. I was just having trouble getting those statistics. So I'm going to compare it to Florida, California, and Texas. And a really important number that I think kind of gives you a good basic understanding on the current market in real estate is months of supply. So do you want to start off by kind of explaining that number and what that means for people that may not understand?
Yeah. So months of supply means if nothing else came on the market, how long would it take to sell out current inventory? So a low months of supply means you're in a seller's market. They can, hold true on pricing. They can expect potentially multiple offers. During COVID, we were in one of the most wild sellers market in the world. Everything was selling in the first weekend, multiple offers. You could expect to accept a cash offer, over asking, things like that. So the general guide is 0 to 5 months is a seller's market. 5 to 7 months is a balanced market, and you really don't stay in that very long. It's usually, some people call it a transitional market. And then over 7 months of supply means you're transitioned into a buyer's market, meaning things aren't selling fast. Usually it's one offer at a time and the buyer has control. They can, negotiate the price down, include terms like home sale contingencies, and, really they're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. So that's one statistic we're going to go over. The three other are the average days on market, the average price, and the number of homes that are currently listed and active under contract. So for people that don't understand that, we're just looking at houses you can buy and are currently on the market, under contract, and have a contingency like an inspection or a financing contingency.
Or just waiting to close.
Or just waiting to close. So right now, New Hampshire, as of yesterday, is at 4.2 months of supply. Okay, and that's as a whole state. And we're seeing, we can break it down by region, and we can see a couple of really interesting contrasting statistics that, support the either direction. And what's really curious, if we compare that number to Florida, California, and Texas, Florida is at 6 months of supply. California is at 3, which really surprised me, and Texas is at 5. So my reasoning behind throwing in those 3 states are, you hear in the news people are leaving California in droves and they're moving to Florida and Texas. And my thought process is, why not New Hampshire too? And that we're seeing that, but it's more people from New England relocating into New Hampshire. And we can touch on some other things later on based off of the YouTube statistics that we've been talking about recently for your amazing YouTube channel. But what are your initial thoughts based off of the months of supply of those 3 states? So Florida's at 6, California's at 3, and Texas is at 5.
Yeah, it does surprise me with California having a lower number. California is great weather. The California's topography, geography, all the natural resources of California it's very popular. You still have a lot of industry out there and having job opportunities. But you do see that migration from California, to Texas. You've got, so you'll see these graphs that are out there, and your initial comment around why not New Hampshire, touch on that first. You see the map of California to Austin, California to, certain parts of Texas, and you see like New Jersey down to Florida, things like that. You just see line after line after line. And the problem with New Hampshire is we have a supply problem. So the number of lines moving to the state isn't indicative of the number of people that want to move to the state. Like, we just don't have a lot of houses to sell. In 2008, right before the crash, or right during the height of the Great Recession, New Hampshire averaged 12,000 homes on the market, and then in the entire state. And 2019, which is more of that balanced market, that 5 to 7 months of supply, buyers were buying, sellers were selling. You had to price it right. You had home inspections, just the normal real estate market, some negotiations involved. And then, so that was about 5,000 homes on the market on average. You hit COVID, supply went to almost zero. Like, I remember there was 4 homes available for sale in the entire town that I sell in Wolfboro. And so the estate just didn't have any houses to sell because people bought them. And we went to under averaging right around 1,000. Right now we're about 2,500, which is still less than half of a normal market. So we just don't have enough homes to make the charts. It's not because of demand. It's not because people don't want to be here. We just don't have houses to sell them, like Austin. Because if you think of Austin, the downtown's the most expensive, and then people still want to be there. So they go out a concentric circle and they build subdivisions around it, and those fill up. Then you go out, then you go out, then you go out. And they've got plenty of land, so they keep going until the market softens and the demand goes down. And that's what's happened. There's been just a huge amount of building in towns like Austin or cities like Austin. So you see that higher months of supply because it's been built out. Like, builders speculated, they put the subdivisions in, and that's slowing things down. So I would argue that you probably are going to see in downtown proper, where everybody wants to be, is going to have a lower months of supply. But if you go out 40 minutes or what have you, you're going to see that number climb, and then the average kind of brings the state down. And then Florida, you've got some factors, like people want to be there for the weather, people want to be there for the tax, advantages, but they also are nervous about hurricanes. You've got the building that collapsed, and there's a lot of assessments going on. Yeah, there's mandatory inspections of buildings. We just bought a condo last month because I think it's a good time to buy in Florida. But there's a big special assessment of over $100,000 that we negotiated into the price. So with that higher absorption rate, we were able to put some terms in there that made it, good for us to buy down there in a softer market. So California surprises me a little bit, but you still see a lot of migration out because of tax implications out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really curious is I wanted to compare based off of the population that we have in New Hampshire, compared to those three other states too, and what their inventory, there's going to be a point here towards the end, and what their inventory should be based off of our inventory, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, Florida, 17 times the population in New Hampshire, Texas 22, and California 28, which is a lot bigger than New Hampshire, as you and I both
Yeah, I think
know.
the city of
Um,
Austin has a bigger real estate market than the state of New Hampshire.
right. And the thing is even at Texas with that 5 months of supply, if we multiply the number of homes that I used, which, so you said 2,500, that's just single family homes. When we include um, mobile homes and condos, and then or manufactured homes and condos, and then the active under contract, we get up to 5,900. So there's like 5,900 properties in circulation right now, and that's also because we are in the throes of summer, and we had the spring market.
The numbers that I use on a 12-month rolling average. So it's
Yeah.
you get winter built into there, and it's just a running 12 months. What's the average per month?
Right. Okay. So my numbers might have worked out than other people's numbers. But based off of the numbers that I was able to pull, like right now, Texas is at 181,000 houses on the market. And if we calculate it based off of our population, they're at 131.5, right? And then Florida, 17x 101.6, California 167.4. All of those numbers, with the exception of California, are lower than what they should be. So even though we're seeing the higher months of supply, there's still not enough houses for sale based off of what the population should be. So that's why I wanted to have that calculation. And it's weird. It doesn't make any sense. There's not as much houses for sale as there should be, but the months of supply is still high.
Well, you've got a lot of things going on in the news. So yeah, the American population is also very much affected by what's the sentiment out there. And the hardest thing in real estate to sell is an unknown. So people are, all right, our interest rate's going to come down. Is the oil price is going to continue to rise? There's a lot of headlines right now. I call it the buyer's deer in headlights. And so we had a lot of that happening over the wintertime. And I would also say that buyers are thinking at this time of year that there's going to be other homes that come on the market that are better. That this is the time of year, it's summertime. Especially in a second home market, they're waiting to see what hits. And if they knew they had to choose now, they might make a move sooner. But the overall problem that we're facing is in 2011 when all the mortgage-backed securities, crashed the housing market. It was something that was artificial. Like people were getting loans that just shouldn't have been given, like 103% financing.
Ninja loans.
Yeah, and so that when that deck of cards came crumbling down, that wiped out the real estate market at the time. So builders stopped building, and they stopped building for almost a decade. So if you look at the number of home starts, it goes up like this to 2007, 8, and then it just goes off the cliff. So we still haven't recovered from a supply standpoint from the Great Recession. It's starting to because of places like Austin, places like Florida, where they have room to build, but places like California, where maybe the cities are packed and you get blocked by the mountains or whatever, in places like New Hampshire, where we've got a bad case of the not in my backyard syndrome, where it's very hard to develop. That's why prices, we had the all-time high price in New Hampshire last month, the all-time high median price. So depending where you are, it's a supply and demand problem. I mean, it's a supply and demand problem anywhere. And so when people say, is this 2008 all over again? I say no. We have a tenth of the inventory when that market crashed. We have a housing shortage in most parts of this, the country. There are pockets where we're able to build because prices were okay and they had room to build. But those areas that were popular back then and popular now that don't have the development that's needed, there's still a housing shortage.
Have you ever heard the term crashing up?
No. So like a K-shaped recovery where you got, the wealthy are doing better, but the lower class are it's harder and harder because I think that's what's happening in a couple different economies right now.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much spot on it because we're seeing this appreciation rates having happening in the industry in the market, right? But we're seeing conflicting numbers, right? So it doesn't make any sense. Like, and let's get on a little bit more of a local level here because, like you just said, New Hampshire just hit its highest price, median price ever in the state. But you're seeing counties like Carroll County, where Wolfboro is, Belknap County, Coas County is kind of an exception because it's very rural, but you're seeing houses sit, right? And there's still not a ton of houses for sale. Why do you think that's happening in the center part of New Hampshire? Because you're really not seeing that in Stratford and Rockingham County, you know?
Yeah, I think part of it's seasonal. I mean, COVID wiped out seasonal. We always said we're a seasonal market. I always say that June is a very tough month for realtors and sellers because it's beautiful out, but no one's here yet because of graduations and all the commitments, kids getting out of school and things like that. So even though it's beautiful out right now, summer hasn't officially started in our second home little resort. So I try to coach sellers to maybe wait, as painful it is as it is, because they want to make sure that they sell by the end of the summer. Summer in New Hampshire is about 3 days. So we have just a short amount of time to get things sold. So there's some impatience. But there are things that have sat for a while, and now that the season is starting, those are going under agreement. So I think part of that's seasonal. And I also think the price and location matter again. COVID, it didn't matter the town. COVID, it didn't matter which lake, how clean it was. Was the town a high tax town? Was it far from restaurants or shopping, opportunities and things like that? So I think you're seeing that the whole market went like this and all the prices went up together.
He's
But I
holding his
think,
hands evenly for people listening.
yeah, no, I mean, so oh yeah. So, basically the tide went up and it brought chips up that shouldn't have happened, where now that it matters the quality of the lake, how deep it is, do your feet sink in when you step on the bottom? Those are the properties that are having a hard time selling right now. But we still see multiple offers on the clean lakes with sunsets and beaches, and the we're back to location matters, pricing matters, and if you do it right, those things will sell.
Absolutely. All right. So next we're going to get on to kind of the button topic, which is going to kind of roll us into the rest of our conversation. So, hold on. So Caleb Hammer, who is a podcaster, YouTuber, I'm not sure if you have heard of him, Adam.
Yep.
You have. Okay. So he went on Joe Rogan. Your thoughts on Joe Rogan, anybody's thoughts, it's fine, But he had shared some thoughts and feelings about the housing market and how it compares to the stock market. And I wanted to share that because a lot of people trust this guy's opinion. I'm not saying it's wrong, but a lot of people are going to watch us and take it like it's scripture. So
I've told people to not get a house, and they're really close to getting a house. That's something they will not give up, because that's another obsession that we have in our country.
So would you say not get a house today because of interest rates?
Not just interest rates. The overall marketplace, S&P 500, it just beats real estate. Commercial real estate's good to get for tax advantages, but the American dream isn't owning a home anymore. It's the freedom of renting, because you can live wherever you want. You can move for a job like that. Getting a house, you're stuck in a house. It requires a massive amount of money for a down payment. And it's just a lack of flexibility in a generation and age where people want to be more flexible and travel and explore and take new jobs everywhere. But it also just doesn't make sense as an investment anymore. It doesn't. It used to be the defining trait of the middle class and one of the largest wealth creating things for the middle class. But now with the incredible stock market that we've had over the past 50 years or so, it beats it every time.
So you were able to hear that.
Yep.
What are your thoughts? and feelings on that hot take?
That's the first time I heard it. So I mean, he's taking a lot of assumptions there. People have to pay rent. Like, so you have to live somewhere and you have expense in that. So there's still going to be money going out the door. It's not like if the house is $200,000, you take that $200,000 and put it into the stock market and let it ride, right? You still have to live somewhere. So you're still paying a payment over years. And I think if you look at the people that rent and the people that own, as they approach a retirement age, the people that own are astronomically more wealthy in a position to retire than people that have rented over the years because they've lived somewhere. Instead of paying rent, they put it into a house, which is also appreciated over time. And now they have all this equity to retire on. So I think that, renting versus owning has been proven over and over again. And then the second part of it, he's kind of mixing messages here is I think that a single family home isn't necessarily just an economic investment. Like I think when you buy a house, you have to be very careful to buy something that you can afford. And I would say if you have a $500,000 house and you want to invest in real estate, you don't put that $500,000 into your primary home because you still have to live there. So he's talking about moving, he's talking about, being flexible and things like that. When you own a house, your equity's in the house. And in order to grab the equity, you do have to sell the house. So, okay, point taken. However, investing in real estate doesn't mean investing in your primary. It means going out and buying another house. And so if you took another $100,000 and put it in the stock market, and you took another $100,000 and bought an investment property, yes, the stock market's going to appreciate, but houses appreciate. So if he's looking at those two numbers, maybe the stock market outperforms it. But if you're looking at real estate, you have somebody else paying for your equity in the home. You have somebody else that's investing in you have the stock market. Nobody else helps you pay for the stocks. In real estate, you have other people helping you pay for your real estate investment, which appreciates. You get the return, you get the cash flow. So I don't know, real estate with the leverage of other people paying you stuff, I would put that up against the stock market. Not to say you shouldn't do both, but to say not to buy a house and not to invest in real estate is a pretty aggressive statement.
Yeah, and especially, I like where you were going with that. Let's talk about because his main perspective is younger people breaking into the housing market, right? And how it just doesn't make sense for them right now. Let's look at a multifamily, for example, an owner-occupied multifamily, which talks about, having other people pay for your real estate, right? And finding a property where the numbers make sense. Don't just buy a multifamily to buy a multifamily. Buy a multifamily where the numbers make sense. Where most of your mortgage is going to be covered, or half of your mortgage is going to be covered with the other person paying it. And I just feel like and also to talk about his down payment argument, you can make the argument you need to put down as much as possible, and I'm not going to disagree with that. Financing most of the house isn't always the best financial decision. But when you're breaking into the market, right, and you qualify for that 3.5% down payment and the numbers are working where most of your mortgage is covered, I don't see the negative in that, especially because, you're saving money living, and a lot of times your mortgage costs will be less than what the average rent would be in an area. Like you're paying $1,750, $2,000 a month in southern New Hampshire for a 2-bedroom, some places even more than that. And if you're buying a house with a $4,500 mortgage and you get that 2,000 back, you're building equity in the house, you're building an investment portfolio, and you're paying less than you would in rent, in some cases.
Yeah,
And I
no,
just think he's missing that.
I just think, yeah, a blanket statement like that is a dangerous thing. And if somebody went out there and was religious about putting money in the stock market month after month, year after year, that is a good strategy, right? That is a good consistency over time, compounding interest, it's going to be successful. But I get worried that somebody doesn't buy a house, they continue to rent, and they don't do the investment. So now they're hurting themselves doubly because they followed half of his strategy, but they're not investing in the stock market. Like I find that when you buy a primary, it's basically forced savings. And then when you buy a multifamily as your primary, like you said, people ask me all the time, my kids are growing up, what should they do? My advice always is buy a multifamily, because then you live on one side, have other people help pay you rent on the other side, and then you don't have to sell it. I'm a big fan of holding real estate for long periods of time. Or you could do a 1031. So you don't even have to pay taxes on the capital gains that you gain over the year. So if you do want to move, or you want to have your investment move, or, we talked about the DST program where you can 1031 into this giant, commercial project that other people have coordinated for you. So I think that there's a lot of different ways in real estate to gain traction and build wealth. So the blanket statement of the stock market outperforms the real estate market, it's just like, what's your strategy? What are you investing? There are ways that you can make the real estate market way outperform the stock market if you do it right.
Right. And another kind of hole in that argument is you want to diversify all your investments, just like how you don't just buy all one stock. You buy into the S&P 500, whatever it is, you diversify the stocks you buy, and you diversify. You don't want to have all your investment in stocks and not hold real estate. And a line that I'm not going to take credit for, but I heard it a while ago is, if you want to build wealth for yourself and retire wealthy, you invest in the stock market. But if you want to create generational wealth for your children, you regularly invest in real estate. And that line has really stuck with me, because if you play your cards right, and I really truly believe it's all about that first home. If you don't buy that first multifamily home because you don't want to deal with a renter, and dealing with renters sucks, and you're not going to be starting off in the right foot, and you're going to be paying for it literally the rest of your life. And I just think that gets you so far ahead, because, especially if you're able to move out of there after a year. You only have to live there a year if you get FHA financing, right? You only live there for a year. You get 3.5% down. You get that mortgage payment that's a lot higher than rent, but you offset it with rents. You live there for a year, then you can rent out the whole building. And even if you're losing a couple $100 a month, you're owning a property for $200 a month or 300, whatever it is, at a low price like that, and it just makes so much more sense to me to diversify and not just say no real estate.
Well, and I would second the diversification by saying, don't put all your eggs in your primary home either. Like, don't, as you get, like, so what we did is we bought a house that we could afford. We thought about tearing it down once real estate was going okay, and rebuilding, because we really liked our spot. But instead we said, what, let's just pay off the mortgage. Let's Gary Keller talks about building a moat. Make a certain amount of money and then build a moat around it, and then make a certain amount of money and build a moat around it, so you can keep getting more and more secure as you go along. So we paid off our mortgage on our primary, and then when we started making money again, good thing we did that, because that was right before the crash, and I wouldn't be in real estate right now if we hadn't made that move. So instead of over investing in our primary, once the market turned and we could do something again, is we stretched to buy a condo. And actually we bought a condo with another family because we couldn't afford what we needed, or what we wanted, alone. So we got creative. We bought a condo with another family and we rented it out. We couldn't afford it without renting it out. We rented it out. And that, they had to leave. So we bought them out. We've used it. We've rented it. It's been a fantastic thing for the family. And we just sold that last week and did a 1031 down to Florida. And it's not because we're going to be snowbirds yet, but we knew that was, something that we wanted. But the appreciation over time is what has allowed us to do that in Florida. And we're not paying capital gains because we've done the 1031 exchange. And, and we live in this tiny little house that got too small for us when we had 3 kids and all that kind of stuff. But we were able to buy a place in Barbados. We were able to buy the ski condo because we weren't so primary home rich that we couldn't do anything else. So I think that there's another aspect of this is, look at real estate like an investment, have a plan, and don't just think that I'm just going to put in a new kitchen for resale value. I'm going to do this for resale value. Like that resale value mentality can get people into trouble as well.
Absolutely. But I do think that you're lying a little bit in there where you said you're not going to be a snowbird now that you have a condo down there. I think you're going to be down there a lot this winter playing golf.
Going to be tempted. I do have to Google alerts for the flights.
Oh, geez. All right. So, yeah, we could cover, I've heard him talk a lot about the stock market, comparing it to real estate too. And he's saying, hey, if you put it in 70 years ago, this is what it's going to be at now, and da 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 da. And, it's a hard bet to make that, yes, it's going to increase. Is it going to increase over the next 70 years like it did over the last 70 years? We don't know that. It's a similar case with real estate too. And I just think diversifying, to sum this all up, diversifying is huge. And if you only look at the past 20 years, real estate percentage wise is right up there with the stock market. And in some cases it might be more,
But no one helps you pay for your stock portfolio.
Yeah.
And you can't ski in front of it, or you can't water ski in front of it.
No, you can't. Nope. Yeah, and you can't make memories with stocks either, So
And that's what I tell people buying on the lake. You're not spending money on Lake Winnipesaukee. You're just moving money to Winnipesaukee that you can enjoy.
right. And one of the strongest, most, recession resistant real estate markets in the country, proof is in the pudding in 2007.
Well, I also think that's in the way we price property. Like if you're in Naples and you have a 600 home subdivision, you sell townhouses, you raise the price. You sell another townhouses, you raise the price. So their prices go up so fast. Here in New Hampshire, we don't have a lot of homes to sell to begin with, and they're all different. Some were built 200 years ago, some were built, brand new construction. So when we use comps or comparable properties, we have a very small selection, and one could be from 3 months ago. So just the nature of how real estate agents price properties, we just tend to go up slower, which is healthier. So we don't have as far to drop should something happen. So it's a healthier aspect or a healthier real estate economy just because how we price property.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Adam, I just thought of something, and I think it's good that we touch on this before we move on to our kind of last-ish topic. And, we had mentioned this before, maybe talking about it, but I think this is a really good point to sort of talk about place and the systems that place offers, or what even is place. I remember when I first got introduced to it, I couldn't explain what it was, and they were technically a business partner of mine, from a zoomed out perspective, being on the team. And I think it's really important that that we talk about this now and sort of why this will tie all into everything. So the Dow Group is partnered with Place. I hadn't really heard of Place before I joined the Dow Group a couple of years ago. There was another team in Rhode Island that I was friendly with, am friendly with, who are a Place team. That was my limited experience with it. Still didn't really understand it. So, Adam, what the hell is Place?
Well, Place is basically a platform for mega teams like ours. It is a place that provides, when I was thinking about joining Place, I thought about what we were trying to build. So if I describe my team, it helps describe what Place is. So, I'm a real estate agent. I've got a really good website. I've got a, great marketing person. We have operations people, and we have all of these key factors that help run a real estate business. Like, so Max, if you were on your own, you'd have to get, a marketing person, a website that's been around for 20 years, like all of these things that you're getting because you're on the team. It would be very expensive to do that on your own. So
Well, especially to pay for your time too, Adam,
well, yeah, I was gonna say, but just like, yeah, and that's, you want to be in rooms that, like I challenge myself to be in rooms with people that are smarter than I am. Like I want to get that experience. I don't want to be, the person that's always trying to lead. I want to be led sometimes with people that have done it before, or doing the research, or, doing the things that you have to do to stay on top. So in New Hampshire, we built this amazing hub with all of these resources, with people that everyone on the team couldn't afford individually. And we also built it in a way that everybody's not on top of each other. I didn't want to have a real estate brokerage with 50 agents all serving the same market, because now we're, really competing with each other. But if I have a really strong hub that supports people in the mountains, that supports people on the seacoast, or supports people in Dover and, Amherst and all over the place, if we have 2 or 3 people using this amazing hub, then they're not cannibalizing each other. They're actually just maximizing all the resources that we have to kill it in their individual market. So if you zoom out to place, that's basically what Ben Kinney and Chris Suarez built. Is, the CFO used to be the CFO of Napster. The president used to be the president of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. We just had Chris Heller join, who used to be the president of Keller Williams. So you have these amazing people that I have their cell phone numbers that I can call and say, hey, I've got this problem, or hey, what's the strategic direction of what we're doing? Like, they're building this and have built this amazing hub that I could never match on my own, even as a large team in New Hampshire. So they've built this network of agents that are all around the country. We're at about 500 teams, and, fractional CFO, HR, websites. And I think they have 31 total companies that they own. So they buy the technology or build the technology. They let us use it for free or at cost, and then they sell it to the rest of the industry. So they have these amazing tools, platforms, strategic guidance that I can tap into while I'm still doing my day-to-day, which is running a big real estate team. And for you, you're doing your real estate job while I'm taking care of the day-to-day on the team, while learning from all these other teams around the country, and, getting the tech, getting the strategic advice and all that sort of thing. So it's like this place down to the team, down to the agents. And for you, it benefits you in your area of specialty. So you have this huge,
Right.
And we've got KW too, but you've got this whole huge thing that's behind you. So when you're sitting one-on-one with a seller or a buyer, you have unlimited resources to help you sell or buy the properties.
Right. So that's great information. How is that going to benefit the consumer? How are our clients going to benefit from us being partners with Place?
Well, I made a vow to myself is to never sit at a kitchen table with the seller and have an excuse as to why I didn't do something or have something, or, have a certain strategy, or I can't afford that, or, our technology doesn't do that. So for us, they bought an AI company 6 years ago, and AI hasn't been popular for 6 years, right? So they had the foresight to buy a company that's been working on AI. So if you're a better trained, better educated, better person to help your clients, that's a direct benefit to the consumer. Like, you can call me and say, hey, Adam, I know you've run into this problem before. Can you help me with it? Versus just trying to figure it out as a single agent. So a consumer, I think, always benefits from a team that's behind their point person. And then, just the tech, like building tech, the people that own the company actually were realtors and did this game for a long time. So the technology is built for the consumer and built for the agent. And we own a mortgage company, and the benefit of owning a mortgage company for the consumer, Envoy Mortgage, is we're in the business of helping people achieve the dream of home ownership, like to dovetail on the other, the stock market thing. We still think this is the American dream. So we want to help people buy houses. And we have a mortgage company that has way more programs than a lot of other mortgage companies, because some of our programs aren't as profitable, but we don't care because we want to sell homes. Like that's our business is selling homes. So even though there's a smaller margin in something, and maybe a bank that's purely focused on numbers will say, you know what, that's not a great program for us. We're going to put that to the side and just focus on these things. Whereas if a real estate company owns a mortgage company and they know, yes, we can make a little bit off the mortgage, but we're also selling houses where we make money too. We want to have a huge array of special circumstances or down payment assistance or, buy before you sell or cash edge, like all of the different programs are in the achievement of the dream of home ownership.
Yeah. So, in a few sentences, how do you explain place to a consumer that's asking you what it is?
Um, Place is a real estate platform designed for mega teams that have outgrown their brokerage.
Got it. All right. So, and how do you feel like it differs from a company like a Zillow, like a Realtor.com, like these other platforms that kind of dabble in mortgages, kind of dabble in everything? How is it different from those companies?
They're not real estate companies, right? They're trying to take the profits from certain parts of our industry and capitalize on it. We want people to own homes. We want people to buy homes, and we want to provide tools to help that happen in a more efficient way, a more affordable way, or a more cost effective way. The same thing, but so it's just looking at what's their mission. So Zillow's mission is to make as much money, and at one time they're trying to take the real estate agent out of the equation because they thought that an automatic number that they produced by algorithms and data available online would be enough. But Zillow's estimates sometimes are perfect and sometimes they're way over and sometimes they're way under. Like they don't know that the dump is down the street that you can smell, right? They don't know that that road is a super busy road certain times of the day, or maybe it's a cutoff for a shortcut to get around traffic. On the lake, they don't know that people just party in front of their houses. Like there are things that, even with the advent of AI, people want local knowledge. And that's why, with our team, we did the area expert way of saying the local person that lives in a community by choice still has a very important role in the buying and selling of properties. And which is why I didn't try to go away from where my expertise. Instead of saying, I'm going to just cover all of this area by myself, I said, you know what? I cover this area very well. I'm going to find somebody like me in that area. And then I'm going to find somebody like me in that area. So the local expert, I think, has a really important role moving forward. And I think that Zillow, Realtor.com, they're just trying to grab leads, sell it to consumers for a profit. And they don't really have that local presence, that local person to help the consumer with boots on the ground.
Yeah, and I look at place as a community of people that want to help others achieve the dream of home ownership, right? And I feel like those companies are certainly lacking that community. When we go to these events that Place graciously puts on for production contest winners, um, you there's an excitement in the room, right? There's an excitement to be there. And who's going to be excited to go to a Zillow convention? You know what I mean? Because, we're excited to help people. We're excited to make sure that the people that are buying and selling through us are getting the best experience possible, selling their homes for the best price possible, and buying homes and being educated during the buying process and not just getting thrown into a house, thrown into a loan officer and really not understanding what you're doing, and like, and I definitely feel like everybody in that room has that same feeling that I do because, I look at people that I get to work with. I don't want to say lucky because that sounds egotistical, but, I'm relieved that they're working with me because I know that I'm not going to screw them and I know that I'm going to educate them and I know that they're going to walk out of this process understanding how that worked, right, on either side.
And
And yeah,
well, I think, part of, because police could have the same mission, the same exact tools and companies and all that kind of stuff. But if they didn't have the same leaders at the top, maybe the
right,
leaders at the top just wanted to have profit. Like we're on a path to IPO. And I know that if that happens, that a lot of that money is just going to get dumped right back into the company to take it to the next level after IPO. Like they're not on a mission the owners aren't on a mission to get rich. They're on a mission to build something that's special. So we could have the same exact thing that we have right now, but if the leaders at the top weren't cultivating the culture that you're talking about, it wouldn't work. And for me, I made a change too in finding real estate agents that, yes, they might have great production. Yes, they might, bring a lot to the table. But if they're not a good culture fit, and if they don't care about the consumer, if they don't have I always ask the abundance versus scarcity mindset. Like if they don't have an abundance mindset, then they're probably not going to be a good fit for the team. So a lot of that comes down to leadership at the top, casting a clear vision and holding true to the culture, which I don't think a Zillow or a Realtor.com, it's just you can go online and sign up for Zillow and there's no questions about, your personal beliefs or character or whatever. And it's not a person. It's just a profile.
right. And I don't know. I'm going to say this, I might cut this out.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like place, just based off of this conversation too, and really thinking about it more, is kind of the anti-institutional investor company. We want people buying houses, and that being in the news a lot kind of makes me think of that, with that the talks of the House passing or whatever that bill that's going to stop institutional investors. It's almost like this company exists to economically do it through, you know, capitalism, just creating this company that is going to help people buy homes, not institutional investors. Does that
Yeah,
sound
no,
like a reasonable take?
it's definitely the bottom up. We're starting with the consumer, adding the real estate agent, adding the local team, then adding the technology and adding place on top of that. Where the Zillows, the Realtor.coms, they started with the technology, they find whoever's willing to pay the highest price. And you never know. When you pick up the phone and call Zillow, it's whoever's paying, for the ad. They have no idea what the house is about. They have no idea, even maybe the town. Like there are people that come up with Zillow leads and they never step foot in the town. So we're starting with the local and making our way up.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to add before we move on?
No, I think we're still under the radar. I think that there's a lot of different companies making headlines and a lot of different things that are happening in the real estate industry, and we're just trucking along, doing it at a community level, being supported by AI and tech. And 5 years from now, everyone's going to know what place is, and they're going to not know where it came from.
The place to find a place.
Yeah, you can have all kinds of place
Oh
puns.
yeah. Yep. And so I am at the point now where whenever anybody says place, I'm like, oh, place. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's a good thing. All
Yeah.
right. So, the next topic I wanted to cover is, kind of ties into everything neatly. I don't know, but how are we going to fix the market right now? Like we had talked about in the beginning of the podcast, you know, housing, home prices are up. It's a weird industry. You see conflicting numbers, and from what I see, and from what I see at a lot of different levels of government and opinions and whatnot, is lowering the interest rates is going to quote unquote fix the industry. And it makes sense, right? On the surface, when you just think about that, oh, the interest rates were lower, I'd be able to afford more, makes sense. But when we really like dig into the numbers, it doesn't. And I want to go before I get your thoughts on that. I want to kind of go over some breakdown of numbers, right? And we're going to go from a U.S. standpoint, not just a New Hampshire standpoint here, just so everybody can understand. So the median home price Q1 2026. So we're catching up a little bit statistically, but 403,000, right? Q1 this year at a 6.5% interest rate. Roughly $2,500 a month, excluding interest. I mean, excluding property tax insurance. It took me a second to get to there, right? And let's say theoretically tomorrow the rates drop to 4.5%, right? 2% drop, significant cut. That same $2,500 payment supports a $493,000 loan. So just like that, you gain around $90,000 in purchasing power, and that sounds great, right, Adam? Wouldn't you agree with that? It sounds amazing. But, if we look at historic statistics, where we see a decrease in the interest rates, and this is going to be a gradual example here. In Q4 of 2018, the national median price was around 323 grand in the United States. And the rates were sitting around 4.8%. And over the next few years, as we know, the interest rates gradually dropped. And they got down to around 2.5% to 3% by mid 2022. And Adam, as we both know, there was a pandemic there, and it's really hard to statistically put numbers into that and roll that in. But the median price raise to $442,000 and at the end of Q3 in 2022, 37% increase compared to the 2018, right? So if we apply that same math here in this example, I know this is kind of getting a little convoluted, but it's going to make sense. To today's $403,000 median, right? Do I have that wrong number? I have the wrong number there. I don't know. You land at roughly $552,000, right? That's your increase in price. And the buyer that waits for those rates to drop to 4.5%, they reach 493.9, right? So the house costs 552, but they're only pre-approved for 493. So the person that waited for the rates to drop can't afford the house they wanted. So they're $58,000 short. Rate cuts don't mean affordability, and that's kind of the point I was getting at. But I wanted to have numbers to back it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think anything that you do on the buyer side to try and solve a seller side problem doesn't work. Right. So I remember probably 2008 or somewhere in the mid 2000s to 2010, there was a huge push for first-time home buyer credit. First-time home buyers, they can't afford houses. So if they buy a house, the government's going to give you 7,500 or 10 grand or whatever it was. And I think if you look at the statistics over that time, you're going to see a price jump by about 10 grand. So all you did was give $10,000 more dollars to the sellers that happen to have houses on the market, because you're just giving buyers more buying power, but you're not solving the problem of a supply, right? So yes, you got some more people in the market, but I think maybe the first 2 or 3 people, or the first 2 or 3% of the people that get in right when it happens, they're the smartest, because they're taking advantage of the incentive before the prices go up. But as with anything, people still buy. It's kind of like realtors getting into the housing or into the business. If the market's going like this, everyone thinks, that's going up and up and up. Oh, I want to get into real estate. I want to get into real estate. And as the market crests and goes over the hill, and if the real estate market goes down, and this was 2008, 9, and 10, the number of realtors still continued to climb for the next year, because we're not noticing the change in the market. So the people that go in when those incentives happen, I think they're smart. They take advantage of the incentive. Why wouldn't they? But if you wait, that whatever the government tries to do is gonna it's a market. Like and the market adjusts to certain things. And if there's more buying power, that means prices will go up.
Right. And the to add on to that, the counter argument that I hear too is, well, if interest rates drop, people are going to want to sell. Okay. But the problem with that is where are the sellers going to go? They're still going to have to buy. So you're creating more buyers when you're trying to create more sellers. And I think there needs to be a natural market correction here. And I think we're starting to see that in these weird conflicting numbers that are going on. Would you agree with that?
Well, if you look at there's a great statistic that the Keller Williams puts out. Gary Keller talks about at most of the conferences. It's the 4% a year trend line that real estate goes up. And we went over the trend line in 2006 and 7. Then the Great Recession hit and we went way under the trend line. And then COVID brought us back up over that trend line and we're flattening off. So I think you can see that we're heading towards the trend line again. So if COVID didn't happen, if the Great Recession didn't happen, we would still be around where we're at right now because things appreciate over time. So I think COVID reset a lot of the trend line artificially. And I also think that the fact that we got trillions of dollars dumped into the market gave buyers an enormous amount of buying power, which first time in, if you bought a house in 2019, you were brilliant. If you bought it in 2020 when everybody was nervous, even more brilliant. And then 2021, people bought, and now we're thinking, as buyer's agents, is this a good time to buy? Who knows? We just had a huge increase in prices. 2019, I used to say we're 9 years into a 7-year cycle of prices going up. So that trillions of dollars that went in, if we didn't have the housing shortage that we have, I would be more nervous, right? But if you have two apples on a shelf, you're not going to decrease the prices of the apples because they're going to sell. Right? So I just think we're going to have this affordability problem for a long time. And the only way to fix an affordability problem, in my mind, is to increase supply. And that comes down to zoning. That comes down to towns getting creative around what they allow to build. Like we have a part of Wolfboro that's lots of conservation. There's parts that used to be, I don't know if it still is, like 10-acre zoning. If you have 100 acres, you can put 10 houses and they have to be in the middle of 100 acres. And they all in the name of conserving the trees. And I'm all for conserving trees and, protecting the environment. But what if you put 10 houses in a 2-acre piece and put the rest in conservation? Right? Now you're building something. Or even better, what if you put 30 apartments in a building that's kind of in the middle, so it's not on the road, you still have the privacy, but you have one roof, you've got one parking lot, you don't have all of these roads that are all tar and taking down trees. Like if the intent is truly to conserve the environment, you can look at creating a whole bunch of houses at a more affordable cost that you can sell at a more affordable cost. But most small towns in New England, certainly, and certainly in New Hampshire, and certainly in my hometown of Wolfboro, no one wants that. So until people start talking about real compromise on both sides about what's a path forward to get more affordable housing, instead of giving buyers more money, which actually just puts more money in the sellers' pockets, there's not going to be any solution to this. And we're just going to be in this place that either you own real estate or you're stuck in rentals because no one can afford, or the young people can't afford it. I mean, I think the average first-time home buyer is now in their 40s when it used to be in the 20s. So without a lot of supply, we're gonna continue to see a lot of people not owning homes, even if they want to.
Right. And I think that just simply goes back to compromise, right? And you know me, like I love the woods. I love nature. I love being in the woods, right?
You don't like
But
compromise.
I guess not. No, but what I'm saying, what I'm trying to get to is, there has to be compromise there, and if there's not compromise there, we're never gonna see affordability happen again. We need supply, and that needs to happen through deregulation of building permitting, deregulating of zoning, like you said, the 10-acre parcels. And I think within the, not to be morbid, but I think within the next 20 years, the people that have been in these areas for a long, long time and enjoyed them 40, 50 years ago when they were like Wolfboro was, right? Like a very small town and there wasn't a ton of people like it is nowadays. When they start dying off, I think we'll see not you. I'm not saying people like you. I'm saying people that are like 80s, plus that have all these big real estate holdings, right? And are the people, quite frankly, in the town halls saying no, 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 no to this stuff. Um,
But
I think
I
that'll
would
happen.
say that I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I remember in 2003 when I built a website because I was the only one in town that knew what a website was. Friends of Wolfboro that was fighting against people banning subdivisions from Wolfboro. Like
Oh,
that
wow.
the town didn't
Okay.
want any more subdivisions ever. Like so this doesn't go away. There's going to be a next set of old people, the next set
Yeah.
of grumpy people. Like and now with Facebook, try to get anything done, right? It's just like
Right.
one person that says, "Oh, this is bad." And it's just like the Facebook wars go on and on. So
Right.
indecision's the easiest decision, but it is a decision. And so towns oftentimes don't do anything because indecision or not making a decision is so much easier than facing the wrath of trying to have some sort of positive change.
So do you think that government intervention in areas, because I seen it in Rhode Island. Like I saw something where there were 14 towns suing the state of Rhode Island to stop the affordability housing requirements that the state passes down. Do you think there should be government intervention in that? And
There is kind of government intervention with
yeah,
zoning, right? So it's
right,
like there, I think that smart people should get together and solve the problem.
right,
And there has to be, like you said, compromise. And it just can't be, stomping around. It's nothing can change. Like I've got three kids. I increased the population by three. They don't have a place to live, right? And everyone's saying, "Well, I've been here for 50 years. My family's been here for 9 generations. We've been here for a minute, right?" So, but
yeah,
my kids can't be here. So that argument doesn't work. We need to have growth just to support the 9 generations that wants to be 10 generations in the area. And by saying don't do anything, don't build anything, those developers are out to make money. They're big and bad. There's just some dogma, just people that just have their blinders on and they don't care about anything. And without that, we're just going to keep what we have, which isn't sustainable. All we're going to have is very expensive homes because
yeah.
people will still want to be here. And without a lot of homes to sell them, the prices will go up, which is a choice. And that's the choice that people are making. And for people like me that already own a home in this town and have seen massive appreciation because of that attitude, that it's going to benefit some people, but I don't think it's going to solve the problem that everyone says that they're trying to solve.
Got it. Well, I think that's a good closing point, Adam. I think we've covered a lot of territory and I think we had a lot of information. So do you have any parting words that you'd like to give people maybe looking to buy or sell a house right now?
Well, the best time to buy a house was 20 years ago, and the second best time to buy a house is today. There's always something that makes sense. There's always something that you can put your money in and find a good deal, or especially those that are looking for that to get their foothold in. Like in Florida, do I know if it's a bottom? Do I know if, I maybe it's going to go down further? But real estate's a long-term play. So as long as you can afford it, and as long as you've done your research, it's probably a good time to buy. And it's not an and or, like still invest in the stock market, look at the multifamilies, look at DSTs, look at all the different ways. Instead of buying the flat screen TV, maybe throw money in the stock market instead of, saving towards a nice brand new car, maybe save towards a nice down payment. when you're smart about these things, it's tough to go broke being intentional and smart about these things.
Absolutely. I always appreciate your time, sir, and thank you all for listening to this, what I feel is a very educational podcast that we did, a little bit different from the typical interview style. So thank you, Adam. I appreciate you taking your time to talk today.
Awesome. Thank you, Max.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Please leave us a review. It will help us reach more people. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, guys. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Also, comment.